Hello everyone, my name is Mike Geig and welcome to another episode of Unity Behind the Game. Today we are talking about Battletoads, and I'm joined here with Dlala Studio with Chris Rickett and Grant Allen. How's it going, guys?
Yes, good.
Hello, you alright?
Fantastic. I really wanted to start with hey there Dlala, what's it like in Essex City? Just, anyway, not my greatest. So, Battletoads. I can't tell you how excited I am for this one. This was pretty exciting. But before we dig into that, tell us, a little bit about Dlala Studio. Actually, first off, tell me about the name, and then tell me about the studio.
Oh, you take this one, Grant.
Yeah, so I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it might be, is it Swahili? Or
I think so.
I think it's Swahili for play. But you'd need to confirm that with AJ, our CEO, because I'm going to be honest, he picked it, and I wasn't going to argue with him. I joined later on.
That's a much more established answer than I was. I was like, we just took Scrabble tokens and threw them out there or whatever. But okay, fair enough. That's pretty good. Fantastic. So tell me a little bit about Dlala Studio.
Do you want me to
Shall I
take this, Chris? Oh, you
Whoever
can
wants
go.
to.
You can go, Chris. Yeah.
Chris, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Right, let's try and remember back in the day. So AJ started the company, I think, back in 2012 with a friend. I joined soon after that, just a couple of weeks after that. I was fresh out of uni, and I joined them to work on like their first title. I'll probably give the abridged version because I know AJ's given this many times. I almost know it off by heart, so I'm trying not to say it verbatim. We then worked with Team 17 on one of our own IPs. We worked on a cancelled project. We worked on some more of our own IP. We did a lot of contract work over the years, including Sea of Thieves. We helped them out. And then, leads up till now. I mean, that really was an abridged version, wasn't it?
Yeah,
That's good.
It was like
how did you guys?
5 points.
How did you guys end up working on the Battletoads IP?
I'll take this one. So, Craig Duncan, who runs Rare, AJ's known him for quite some time now. I think it was within the first year of the studio actually coming together, and he's always been kind of like a mentor to AJ, so they've had quite a good kind of working relationship. And we originally, probably back in 2015, 2016, we started throwing about pitches because AJ's always wanted to do Battletoads. So it was a case of, first time I think he met Craig Duncan, the first thing he said was, "So are you going to give me Battletoads? Are you going to give me Battletoads?" Obviously Craig was like, no, at that point. So we kind of worked on some pitches in 2015-16. They were absolutely terrible, didn't get picked up. Then we moved on to another project which was cancelled sadly, but after that project happened, we then AJ spoke to Craig and was like, hey, look at all these tools that we made which helped us with that project. Craig saw them. Obviously a little spark went off in his head and he was like, I think we should start talking about Battletoads again. And then, so pitch started happening then. We kind of had a bit of a more refined kind of idea of what we wanted to do with it and what as a studio we knew we could do. And then, about 10... I think it was probably about we'll say a week. We'll say it was a week before E3, I think it was, that Craig was... Yeah, it was signed literally just before E3, because what happened actually was how we found out we got the contract was a case that AJ was... we thought we didn't have it and we was leaving it to rest, and because it had been a while since we had discussed it with Craig and Rare. And then AJ got an email randomly from Craig going, hey, I think he was in Seattle, I'm going into some meetings. Just so you know, Battletoads, is it still something you'd want to do? And AJ was like, yeah, definitely something we'd still want to do. About an hour later, AJ got an email and it literally just said, going into meetings for the next 10 hours, we are go. And then AJ was just sat there and was like, "Well, what does that mean? What does we are go mean?"
We are
Give me more information.
And he got the strategy team together and was like, "What does this email mean? Does this mean we have it? Does this mean we don't have it?" So then there was 10 hours of agonising. Do we? Don't we? Craig got back from his meetings. Was like, "Yep, we're all a go." And then literally we had, I think, was it about like a week or no, it was probably a month we had to make the first initial reveal trailer. And then AJ signed the actual contract 2 days before we flew to E3 for the reveal trailer. So it was all kind of lots and lots of long time of work, which led to it all happening within the space of like a month. And then, yeah. And
well,
then
that's how
we
it goes, right?
got it.
Yeah, fantastic. It was half the email. The other half was, we are going to discuss this later, apparently. Yeah. So, yeah. And so, I mean, I played a lot of Battletoads, and I know previously we had talked about that. Was it daunting to pick up, something famous, notorious, like Battletoads was, and have to work on that?
Definitely. I mean, jumping off from what Grant was saying, we didn't have anything when we showed that kind of teaser trailer. Like, we'd literally signed the contract a few days before. And all we heard was, we want to see gameplay. We want to see gameplay. Why is there not much gameplay? And we were just like, oh God, like even then we felt the pressure because they wanted gameplay before we'd even started,
Mm-hmm.
So definitely the kind of the Battletoads fans, they know what they want.
They're aggressive.
Yeah, they're vocal. We were definitely early on thinking, right, how can we do this justice, but also bring it forward and not just do the same again, like try and modernize it somehow.
Nice. Fantastic. So tell me a little bit of, so let's actually talk about the game now, right? So tell us a little bit about the story, the gameplay. Like, what does Battletoads 2.0 look like?
So I would say Battletoads 2020 kind of instills the same feel of the original in regards to it was very much like a genre hopping game, and I think one of the clear things that we pitched going into it was that we're gonna hone in on the idea that it is constantly changing. I mean, as a game player myself, I'm a massive fan of random small games, and one of my favorite games when I was growing up was a PlayStation port of a Japanese arcade game called Bishi Bashi Special Edition, which was essentially just like all these tiny mini games that would randomly be thrown at you, all with different rules and whatnot. And that was kind of like we always knew we wanted to have genre mashup, maybe not to that degree that it was changing constantly, but always wanted to pay homage to kind of the genre hopping that the originals did. But there's a lot more genres now than there used to be back then. But the game itself, just story-wise, kind of, it takes place 26 years after the last game. Essentially, the Toads, spoiler alert if you haven't played it, the Toads are in they didn't realise they were in a simulation all this time and had been trapped there by the Topians. They realise when they get into the outside world that no one actually knows who they are. And they have to they go on this story arc of, to become heroes again. But the nice thing is that, we got to inject a lot of personality into the Toads through the modern adaptation of it. And they all have, their own flaws that they have to deal with and whatnot. So kind of doubling down on, each character playing different and being a different, person in themselves and role.
Yeah. No, the storyline so far, I've been playing it a whole bunch with my kids, and it's really funny. It feels like you're throwback to the '90s at the same time with just more modern humor. Rash, also the best kisser. Cracks me up there. But no, it's the storyline is on point. It's pretty fun. So when you have something like this sort of legacy game, and as you had said, you brought a lot of the feel with it and you modernized it for these games. What about the original did you bring with you? What were the things you said, okay, these mechanics or these design elements or whatever, those are the things that have to be in this modern adaptation?
I think if I was brutally honest, we knew there had to be combat. We knew there had to be morphing. We knew there had to be turbo bikes. Like, there just had to be.
It has to be turbo
Um,
bikes.
and we knew that we wanted the feel of the genre hopping from the original.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew that we wanted to keep that feeling that we had playing the original, which is it felt like it was a cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how like we saw it, which is how it ended up kind of where it was. Just we didn't see it any other way. There's anthropomorphic toads that are turning their fists and their limbs into different objects. So we definitely knew that we wanted the smash hits to kind of to kind of be in there. But other than that, it was kind of taking that and just pushing it as far as we could. And just in the end, it one of the kind of design ethoses that we had, and we had it written on a blackboard in the office, was just, does it make you say stupid game? Because we found we were sat there, we were coming up with ideas, we were playing them, and you'd overhear people just like chuckling to themselves and just being like, "This is a stupid game." And we was just like, can we keep that feeling like, just on the cusp of like the gameplay's fun, what you're doing is weird, but like, and that kind of playing into the writing and the characters that we had created as well. And a lot of the time, like the design would slightly dictate the story, but a majority of the time, the story and the writing kind of dictated the design and allowed us to kind of do some strange things with the gameplay.
Absolutely. So, you're talking about like these design elements in this, it's a stupid game, but it's like the fun kind of stupid. It's like the reason people watch bad movies, or you know what I mean? It's like just the fun of it, right? So if you had to distill this down and say, okay, this is the target player, right? This is the person that is going to this is their game. Let's call this person Liam, right? How would you describe Liam?
Cool. That's a tough one, isn't it? Because we
Did
found
you-
that it can be very divisive.
Right.
People can be loving it, and then they get to their nemesis game mode, and then
Turbo
suddenly, yeah, it's just I'm out. This is too difficult. So,
I mean, I've got an answer, Chris. If you,
I was literally just going to say they have to be versatile. That was all I was going to say. They have to be able to adapt to almost anything.
The Swiss Army knives of gamer.
Yeah, but it sounds like Grant has a better description than a one-word answer.
So I would describe Liam as, potentially grew up with the old games, potentially, is at an age now where they have kids, and this is something where, it's an experience where it can touch on that nostalgia that they had for those kind of games when the original came out, but then also has the capability to draw in, draw new fans in the ages of their kids, or just be able to appeal to anyone, whether that's through the way that we've designed it, so it's not purely one type of game, so there's something in there for everyone. And then also combined with the humor and the visuals that we have there, it kind of, I feel like it is for everyone but might not be for everyone. Which is a bit of a fluff answer, but
So basically, you're saying I'm Liam, is right? Like, is you basically
you're
describing
Yeah, yeah.
No, fantastic. It's for everyone, but not for everyone. I like that. That's a great answer.
That's a good tagline. Yep.
So, I mean, personally, for each of you, when you knew you were taking on Battletoads, you knew that this is something that you were individually going to be working on. What was your personal priority for this game, right? Like for each of you, like you were like, okay, this is what I want this to achieve. I know I'm coming with the real zingers today.
I think for me, I definitely wanted it to be divisive. I wanted, because I think the original kind of was, you had people that loved it and you had people that hated it because other people loved it and it was so difficult and things. I think I wanted to have that kind of conversation point. I wanted to have that rhetoric out there that people are like, oh, that's really hard. Oh, have you completed this? Oh, have you managed that? That kind of conversation that kind of echoed round. That was definitely something that I wanted to happen again.
Nice.
I think for me, it was almost. I think once we kind of. When we knew we wanted to do the genre hopping and whatnot, and we knew the kind of pacing that we wanted for the game, I think for me more than anything, it was kind of the challenge of actually being able to do it, and actually being able to say, hey, we've got all these. I mean, we dropped a fair few game modes that didn't make it into the game, but being able to just be like, okay, well, we've never done a space shooter before. We can definitely, we'll do that. Yeah, no problem. Okay, yep, general combat. Yep, okay, boss battles. Yep, okay. What about if you're grinding on a diplomat for a whole level? Yep, we'll do that. Yep, no problem. And I think for me it was more kind of just being open to the ideas from any part of the company which could then become gameplay, and just making sure that no idea is a bad idea, and making sure that everything is just looked at and we just try everything. And I think like it was the perfect game to do it because of the kind of genre hopping that was there. And yeah, I think it was just more proving. I'm going to use a word you did, Chris. Proving versatile with what the company was able to do.
Good word.
Yeah, that's the word of the day. Yeah, brought to you by the letter V. So speaking of derisive, real quick here. So somehow, and this isn't even a question, I'm just going to make a statement. Somehow you've managed to take the turbo bike level and make it easier, but not. Like, make it still super frustrating. And I mean, it's not a question. I'm making a statement there. But yeah, it was a lot more fun. It felt a lot more fair. But at the same time, you had me like yelling at my screen, like, "Come on!" It was good.
Yeah,
We've had a long rocky road with that. Getting the difficulty right on that level.
Yeah,
but I do
how
like
many times?
I do like the fact that you added that
this?
invincibility. If you just can't make it happen. Fine, all right, I give up. I'll go back later and do it. I mean, I got to the very, very, very last part, and then I'm just like, whatever. I've already spent a lot of time on this. And my kids were getting bored, and they're just like, Dad, why can't you do this? And I'm like, oh, all right, fine, I'll come back to it. But it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, that was. So I was personally like in charge of the turbo bike levels.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things that we started right at the beginning of the project, and we didn't finish it till near the end of the project because there was people might think that it's hard now, but it was
impossible.
It was so hard. It was. I remember I would build out a track. It would take me probably about like a 4 days to a week to build out a version of the track. I would then get everyone to play it. It's too hard. I'd then get it to a position where I take out some walls. I make it easier. It's too hard. And then like get it to a position where everyone in the company's like, yeah, this is the right difficulty. This is what we should be going for. And then we'd send it off and get a few of the guys from Rare to play it. And then Rare would just be like, it's too hard. You need to change it. So, I mean, I would love to, at some point, just be like, hey, get the original version that I done of it, and just be like, hey, everyone in the world, do you want to try and play this version?
Could you play that version?
But yeah, I could, yeah. Like,
okay.
I mean, it. But then I'm biased because I'm designing it, right? So I'm like, I know exactly the right time to push things. But then, like, the Nightmare Riders, spoilers if you haven't got to it near the end of the game, which is the second hover bike section, that was leaning more towards the homage of the original, by using, slightly larger walls, so kind of your vision is kind of impaired at certain points. But that still wasn't as hard, I don't think, as the original version that I'd done of it. I think Chris can vouch me for that.
Yeah, definitely. I think the bar was basically, can over 50% of the studio complete it? And if they could, yeah, that's easy
Good
enough.
enough. Yeah. Well, I remember in the original Battletoads that level was so hard. That's the reason I got a Game Genie. Like for Christmas, I'm like, I need a Game Genie. I can't. Just literally could not get past it. And then I was like, there's more to this game. Look at all this other stuff past this level. It was really challenging. So I like that you kept the spirit of that for sure. No, that's really, really good. So, and then to what you were talking about, Grant, in your answer, we were talking about just all of these game modes, and you had all these people, trying out different things and stuff like that. You actually had something you guys had told me about previously, this sort of prototyping methodology of testing out ideas and stuff like that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I guess we kind of had the same approach to prototyping as we did with ideas. So any way that you could describe it, show it, or perform it, then and get people on board with it, we allowed people to do. So we had some prototypes which were built completely out of paper. We had ones where we'd build them out in Unity itself, but then we also had ones where, for example, taming the hoverbike, which got dropped. Essentially, one of the hoverbikes went to live and with buffalo in the middle of the desert. You'd have to go and kind of wrangle it, but the idea was that there was this kind of what's the time, Mr. Wolf scenario, where you'd kind of have to creep towards it and it would turn back and face you, kind of thing. And then that was kind of performed as explaining how we would do that section. But yeah, we kind of had that approach where it was just anything goes. I think as a designer as well, and I think Chris will agree, I have the most random references to how I think something should play or work, and I think that's great, because I think you shouldn't always have a reference point be another video game or another mechanic from a video game. I think the amount of references that you can get just from real life or experiences, I guess, is still very, very valid. How a mechanic could work, I could just be like a door handle. When you're using it like a door handle, and then Chris will look at me and be like, what? And I'll be like, yeah, door handle, like this, it works like this. And, it half makes sense, but then still makes sense. But I think that helped with the kind of fun and the stupidness of kind of the stuff that we were doing, was that we just kind of allowed anyone to be able to present their ideas in any kind of way. And we had this nice cycle where it was every week we would be given what we wanted to work on, and then by the Friday we would be presenting it to the rest of the team, which is a method which was used, I believe it was Google who did it, where it was that weekly kind of turnout of ideas and prototypes. But that was a very, very fun time in the studio when we was doing all of that.
Nice. Fantastic. So speaking of these game modes, why you have so many? I was going to say why so many, but you've definitely covered that as to why. But tell me about this. Now maybe I wrote it down wrong. The boss battle dating sim.
Oh, yeah. So one of our weekly long cycles, we would start on Monday. We'd have this kind of not quite one liner, but we'd have this idea, and this idea was, have you seen Blind Date? So the idea is that you ask questions to some people that you can't see, and they answer one at a time, and you've got to choose your date based upon their answers. And we thought, wouldn't it be stupid if they were boss battles that you had to fight, and you were picking your boss battles, so you were asking them questions, what's your idea of an ideal date, and they'll reply back with a walk on the sun or something, and you'd be like, whoa, that sounds a bit hot and dangerous or something, and the other one would be like, oh, I just like chilling and watching a film. You'd be like, right, okay, that might be an easier boss battle to fight. And you'd be trying to work out kind of what each boss battle would be by asking them questions. And that was one of our week-long cycles. So yeah, by the time we got to the Friday, we had this playable where you would be asking these questions, and you just see these little portraits reply with things like that, and you'd be trying to work out, is that a difficult boss battle? What am I likely to have to do on that boss battle? And that was one of the examples of, this is a stupid game. This is how we're picking a boss fight.
Oh no, that sounds awesome. Anyway, yeah, that's awesome. So I would say this one more on the game modes here, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the the mechanics and implementation stuff. But Of all of these game modes that you've either tried and didn't make it or did make it in game, what would you say is each of your favorites?
So I've got a clear favourite. It's probably going to be divisive. I don't think you've got to it yet, so it might be a bit of a spoiler. But it's the emergency stations. So there's a console panel in front of you, things are going wrong, and you've got to fix all these little things by doing tiny little interactions. I think I've got a soft spot for it because I believe it's the only game mode I had nothing to do with. So I can still kind of play it as from like the player perspective. I haven't peeked behind the curtain too much. I can kind of just enjoy it for what it is. So I've got kind of a secret soft spot for that because I still get a little hint of every time it comes up. I'm like, oh, I haven't done this much.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, I definitely get that. There have been games I've worked on, and someone would be like, "Is it fun?" I don't know. I've never played it. Like, like, probably fun. I would hope so, anyway. But whatever.
I think my favourite, and this isn't even necessarily because it's the gameplay, but I think it was just the idea is my favourite, is the menial jobs, which is like a small like QTE section.
I enjoyed that very much. Yeah.
And I remember early on, I was just like, yeah, wouldn't it just be stupid if like Pimple had to become a masseuse and then Zitz was just like working as an email attacher or something in a factory? And it was one of those ones where I was like, said it in passing comment, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, it's in the script. And I'm like, okay, so now we have to actually do it. But I think it's so stupid because you do that whole first level where it's like high impact like combat. You then have like that little cutscene and you think, right, we're going to get right back into the game, and then you just go to like Pimple with the pan flute music and he's just like massaging a naked alien kind of thing. And I just think it's just so stupid, and I think it just kind of hits the I think it sets the tone for the expectation of the rest of the game quite well. But yeah, that would be my favourite.
Yeah, fair enough. It was good. Yeah, I was in the same boat. I was like, wait, I'm doing what now? Like, we're just like fixing the email, or typing the emails, fixing the computer, but banging on it. Yeah, it's very, very enjoyable. All right. So moving on then. One of the things, actually, you actually have a tech talk with us about some of the optimization stuff that you had to do to keep the frame rates high and stuff like that. Now, without giving away the whole tech talk, but definitely check that out, for anyone listening. But what were some of the optimizations? What are some of the things you had to do to make it like perform the way it is now?
So, with a lot of our projects, our timescale is quite short. So I know a lot of people say, don't optimize early, don't over optimize early on. You don't know what the problems are going to be. But we keep an eye on all the Unity talks that kind of are about. So we do tend to implement early on those kind of known wins. So for example, I think the Inside guys did it after there was an optimization talk at Unite. We only have one update in our game. So that's one Unity message update. And then we manage what subscribes and what decides to be updated. So we have full control over that. We don't just kind of create a component, throw in an update. We've got a lot of event systems. Again, from, I think I mentioned it in the talk, I've forgotten his name, but there's a Unite 2017 in Austin, I think. A guy did a talk about scriptable objects and event systems, and we went running with that.
Maybe Richard, maybe it's Ian Dundor. I'm not sure. But anyway, keep going.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was, but we fully adopted that. We created our own event system. So again, everything's event driven. So if we don't need to pull something, we don't. But then diving into some of the aspects that are in that talk, we had a lot of problems with culling certain objects, often our own components just kind of ticking, doing calculations that they're just not needed at the moment. They're miles away. They're at the end of the level. You can't see them yet, things like that.
For folks listening, by the way, culling is when you can't see an object, right? And so there's no reason for it to be updating or animating or doing whatever because you can't see it anyway.
Yeah, you'll have this little bird in the background right at the end of the level that every 3 seconds just looks around and chirps or something. And, you're doing that calculation. You're ticking its timer, you're firing audio. It might be miles away, so you can't hear it, but that's still something that's being processed. So to try and cull that, we used Unity's culling group API, which we implemented quite late, but it just allowed us to quickly mark loads of objects and be like, hey, this is its sphere. If we're nowhere near that, don't even bother doing half your calculations. So we've got a lot of wins from that. The optimization wasn't as tough as we thought it would be. Luckily, our early decisions actually meant that there were only a few optimizations we needed late in the game. But
there you go.
We managed it.
Pro tip: have a solid foundation, and the rest of it, the late game stuff is a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many talks already out there on how to like optimize specifically in Unity. So yeah, I'd definitely say just read a couple of those. Just adding a few of them in makes your life a lot easier.
Fantastic. Awesome. Yeah, I definitely liked what you were talking about with the color groups, and you got a very interesting way of attacking depth of field as well. And again, not to give it all away here, but definitely check it out if you're interested. If you have like a quick summary of that, that'd be cool here.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's try and summarize it. So we wanted depth of field, but we're in 2D, so that doesn't work out of the box because sprites aren't writing to the depth buffer, and that's what's used to determine how far something is away from the camera. So what we ended up doing was writing our own shader that did that. It wrote it as if it was an opaque object, so each of our sprites was opaque in the background. And we would use a kind of camera stacking to render all of that to a lower resolution camera that we could then do all the post-processing on while doing the depth of field post-process. But it was quicker because it was on a smaller render target. Then we would quickly copy that across to our main camera just before we did the rest of our transparent render. And that just meant that we got the whole depth of field for all the background, but we didn't really have to pay the full cost, because in 4K, rendering all of that and blurring that 4K render texture would have been really expensive. But doing it at 1080, because you're blurring things, right? So you're losing like clarity anyway. So you're not going to notice when you end up blurring it on a lower resolution. And that got us a lot of render time back.
Nice. And it also meant that artists didn't have to then make blurry versions of art assets that go in the background.
Exactly that. And then accidentally put it too close to the camera. So you've got this blurry thing that's a little bit too close. And it was all kind of handled at runtime.
Nice. Excellent. So we talked a little bit about game modes and favorite game modes, but what were some of maybe the implementations, either some of the mechanics, some of the features that you just couldn't get to feel right or to work right?
Go on, Grant, know what you're going to say.
What, a whole game mode?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of modes in the game which were actually AJ, our CEO, wanted to put on the chopping block and actually get rid of. And there was a couple of points with those where me and Chris had to go to him and be like, no, give us a week. Just let us play with it and we'll show you that there is something there. And that being the... I forgot the name of the level now. Not Stumped.
We talking Jeff Slay?
Jeff Slay, yeah.
Yep.
So that was the kind of tobogganing on the diplomat level. That went through loads of iterations, and there were times where there were multiple lanes on different depths where you'd switch between them, and there was like enemies that would fire at you and whatnot as you were going along, and it just got to the point where it was almost like it almost felt as if I think you and me, Chris, both looked at it and we were just like, it feels like the core of it isn't right yet. Like we're adding all these layers and all these mechanics onto it, but the kind of actual feeling of just, riding on that diplomat's head didn't feel right. And trying to get that feeling right was a challenge, but it kind of, I think it paid off. It's one of those game modes where it's gotten the most people sending tweets to us being like, that had me nearly punching the screen, that had me like my fingers were hurting, and I revel in that because I love that level now. But then also, as well as that, we had loads of issues with space combat. I don't know if you want to speak on that, Chris.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of times our cycle for each of these genres was really tight in terms of time. So we'd often have like 2 weeks to basically just nail everything that we wanted. And I think a lot of the time we were a little bit ambitious. We like had all these ideas that Grant was saying, oh yeah, what about this? What about this? And we'd have a pile of ideas that we thought all would work. And then when they all got put in together, it just didn't gel. It was too complicated. We needed to distill it back down to the fun, the little bits that we knew we could nail and get polished. And Space Combat was definitely one of those. We had all sorts of different things going on. The screen would lock, then it would unlock, then it would become an exploration game, then you'd go back in. We had all these different elements that we just couldn't get right. And it was only when we stripped it right back, we're like, no, what's fun? What is the fun element? It's dodging bullets and firing bullets. It needs to feel good moving and shooting. That's it. And kind of as soon as we got that and we stripped it all back, I think that was when we were like, right, we can start seeing, the nugget of gold there. We just got to make sure we don't lose that while we're digging it out. And I think it worked in the end. I definitely think that what we have is way better than kind of what we started with, even though it was way more complicated. I think that was a kind of a trend on a few of them. We just needed to distill it down to the fun. What was it? What was the spark that started it?
Mm-hmm. Well, they call that the 4 F's of game development, right? Fail fast and find the fun. So just get down to it. I will forever take away from this podcast, by the way, that the sentence "riding on the diplomat's head" just didn't feel right. So I think that will resonate for a long time. Just the things you get to do in this job. So yeah, that's quite enjoyable. But yeah, it's good to, as you're talking about, you some things get too complex, and you're like, wait a minute, what are we doing? All right, wait a minute. Okay, let's declutter here a little bit. Get back to the core, the reason we're doing this thing. And so, absolutely. One thing I actually forgot to ask earlier, and I just saw it in my notes, and I do want to call it out. The game, normally when you do like 2D or sprite based, well, not, I don't want to say normally, right? But one of the common practices is to do some form of like bone rigging on the sprites and stuff like that to make animations simpler and to reduce the number of assets. One of the more challenging ways to do it is, obviously like sprite animations where you're flipping through images, and even more so like this sort of hand-drawn aspect, this hand-drawn art style, which is what you've opted for with Battletoads. So why that style? Why that hand-drawn kind of flowy, more difficult to get right sort of animation style?
Yeah, I think when you kind of look back at kind of the original pitches that we had for the game, and like I'd mentioned previously, we kind of always saw the original Battletoads as like a cartoon, and especially, we're massive fans in the studios of, 90s Nickelodeon Cartoon Network, like Our Real Monsters, Rugrats, and bits like that. I mean, even Earthworm Jim, which is a nice segue, because our actual lead animator, Eric Chacon, his first job was cleaning up the line work for the original Earthworm Jim game.
It's a great game.
And I think like for us it was always the idea of a playable cartoon, and it was always about making it feel like the player is literally playing a cartoon, and visually it looking like those cartoons that we remember from like the early 90s. And even there's great cartoons out now that are doing it, like the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I think it was just the right stylistic choice for us to be able to get that kind of over-the-top animated feel, but still kind of have the clarity in those smears that we wanted as they were kind of like attacking. And if I'm honest, like I don't think there was any other option. I think the vision of it was just it was always going to be that, like in our heads. Although Chris would probably have liked it maybe in a different way, because it would have been easier. but I'm not sure.
I mean, we did make use of some bone animation, but it was not for the characters, and we that was a choice. We purposefully made that choice because I think there's an element of charm that you get from a per frame animation that it gives you it just gives you a completely different aesthetic. Like Grant was touching on, it feels more cartoony, more, I don't
fluid.
know. Yeah, it feels more I don't want to say the word artistic because I'm not an artist and I shouldn't use that word.
You can be an artist, Chris. Everyone's an artist.
But it feels more deliberate, and like the smear frames and stuff. It's just it feels like not quite a forgotten art form, but it feels like something that I think we don't get as often as we used to.
Definitely stands out when you do it.
Exactly. And then giving that contrast to the things in the background, the foliage and things that are animated in other smoother ways, like bone animations or through vertex shaders. I think that it gives a nice contrast between the kind of the characters and how they're animated compared to the the props in the background. I think it just gives more character to the characters.
I'd have to imagine the morphing would be a lot harder with bone animation as well, because you have quite a bit.
There is that. That would be a challenge in itself.
But
I think
morphing
it
is
gives them
actually really
freedom.
cool. That my kids, it's all they do is they just do all the different morphing. They just think it's the coolest thing. So it was really well done, very smooth. Oddball question here, just completely random. But so you got your characters, Zitz, Pimple, and Rash, if I'm remembering correctly, right? Who's your favorite?
I think mine is Pimple, even though playing as him sometimes can be an uphill struggle. But I love his character, this gentle giant that really doesn't really want to get involved. He just wants to massage people.
His fists are for healing.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
for hurting, right? Yeah.
Like even just his idol, like how he just kind of rocks there. He's nice and chilled. He's kind of ready, but only as much as he has to be. Like I do enjoy his animation set. He's an incredible character.
Mm. I think to play as is definitely Pimple, but I think as a character, I think as soon as I heard Ryan Ridley saying the lines for Zitz, I was just like, he's nailed it. Like he's perfect for that role. And I think character-wise, I just love that he's got this own crisis going on in his head about being a leader the whole time. And I just think that his character-wise, like Zitz, is amazing. I think.
Yeah. No, I like the very one of the first lines of the game. They introduce the characters like, oh no, it's Pimple, the big one, and Zitz, the leader, and Rash, the one with sunglasses. And I'm like, yep, summary done, perfect. For me, I would have to say it's Zitz because I like the fact that you can knock your opponents up in the air and then air juggle them a bit quite more easily than the other characters, and then turn into a jackhammer naturally because that's what toads do. So fantastic. So a few more questions here just to sort of wrap up. What would you say you're most proud of with this game?
I think for me, it's getting that kind of seamless experience of all the genres that we've managed to get together, but it kind of all tying into this coherent experience that's smooth. Obviously, technically, we're hitting our 60 frames and everything. But just kind of getting that start to finish with all the cutscenes and everything just all in. I think that's it for me because I was always concerned that with 11 plus game modes, how is this actually gonna play as an experience? If someone wants to sit down and play from start to finish, how is that going to feel? I definitely think that went way better than I'd hoped. So yeah, I'm definitely proud of how that turned out.
I've got a bit of a cop-out answer, which is I think I'm proud of all of it, but I think the reason I'm proud of all of it is because way from the beginning of the project, like I mentioned, kind of everyone was involved, and I feel like because of the openness and because the ideas were flowing so much, there's just so much of everyone's personalities throughout the studio, throughout every single piece of it. And I think it's a great testament to kind of like just how stupid we are, and also like how hardworking and how dedicated, and just seeing this, it's almost like having a child, right? So once it was released, it was then like, I'm so proud of this complete thing because it's the sum of all of this time and all of the people that have been involved, and it feels like a great amalgamation of just our studio as a whole. But yeah, a cop-out answer, I'm proud of all of it.
And much like a child, often you look at it and go, "This is kind of stupid." So, all right, I have a bit of a philosophical one for you here. Like, what did you learn about yourselves during the journey of making this game?
Yeah, so that's a tough one, isn't it?
I learned that I could do it because this was the first project where I was lead designer. I'd been a designer and a concept artist previously before then, and this was the first time I was kind of thrusted into the lead design role. And I think it's probably not the easiest game to start with that many game modes all in one. But it was definitely like I feel I feel like I learned that I could do it, and learned that you always have imposter syndrome with these kind of things, but learned that concentrate and you just keep doing what you're doing and being the weirdo that you are, and keep making these stupid things, these stupid comments, and they all kind of pile in, and then like I said, you get this end product. And I think I think that's the biggest thing I learned, is that I can do it.
Awesome.
I think in a similar vein, when we had so many game modes that we were kind of struggling to find the fun, and Grant and I would kind of not give up on it. I think we learned basically kind of where our skill set lies in what we can save. So there were a lot of times where we found our feet. We were like, no, do you know what? This we can do. It doesn't look good at the moment. Sorry, guys, everyone, but we will get this over the line. Like, I think we definitely learned kind of where our limits were, and also when to determine if something was kind of not worth the time, and when things were just, one good idea away from being finished.
Awesome. Awesome. So, where can people find Battletoads?
Do you want to do the spiel, Chris?
Oh, there's a spiel. All right.
I didn't even know there was a spiel, so I'm glad I'm not.
Well,
doing it.
you could put on like a nice voice. Battletoads is available through Xbox Games Pass, the Xbox Online Store, and Steam.
That was great, Grant. That was. You could do like the gruff announcer voice, just like Battletoads available now. Wherever battles and toads are found. So, all right. So just to clarify, you said again there, where's Battletoads available?
It's on.
I was so mesmerized by your voice over there that I was, you know what I mean? That.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can get it on Xbox Game Pass, Xbox Store, which is Windows, and also on the consoles, and then also on Steam.
Fantastic. Last question for you. What's next for Dlala?
Well, I think
we'll end it.
We can. Well, we are working on something new now. We're in the pre-production of that, but it's definitely a game.
It's very exciting.
Is it fighting newts or other amphibians / reptiles?
Yeah, we're working through the amphibians. Yeah,
slowly but surely. Fair enough. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, guys. It was a real pleasure having you here. Again, the game's Battletoads, talking with Dlala Studio and Chris and Grant. Anything else you want to say to the listeners before we wrap up?
The turbo bikes isn't that hard.
No.
I'm not very good at games, so. Fair enough. Chris, anything?
Play it and tell us what you think.
Fair enough. Awesome. Well, thank you so again very much. It's been a lot of fun. And thank you everyone for listening. And y'all have a fantastic day. All right. Cheers.